Welcome to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson of the Culinary Institute of Canada. Today at Annie's Table Culinary Studio in New London, Prince Edward Island. Today's guest chef, Kyle Panton from Sims Corner Steakhouse and Oyster Bar. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
So you're a graduate of the culinary, you're a chef at Sims,
Yes.
and 2014 you've been very busy with all of the burger loves
Yes.
and chowder competitions that have been going on.
Very fortunate.
And so how'd you find the burger love competition?
It was very successful for us. We sold over 4,000 burgers in the month of April, and we ended up winning it. By People's Choice, so that was a great honor to have.
Yeah. And you've been very popular since then, and then the international chowder competition that we just...
Yes, then I just won that for the second year in a row, which is nice. And I also won the PEI chowder competition this year, so...
Congratulations, that's
Thank
great.
you.
So today we're making...
Seafood chowder.
Seafood chowder.
Why not?
Awesome. So where do we get started at?
All right, so I have my mise en place out in front of us. So this is all my prep for my chowder. So we got our pot heating up.
Yep.
I'm just gonna add in some double smoked bacon. So I'm just adding that in to get it to sear off, getting all the sides brown. I want the fat from that bacon to kind of be in the chowder, the flavor.
Okay, so we're gonna use that. So no oil put in prior to that, just heat up the pan?
We're not gonna put any oil in at all. I am gonna add a little butter once we get that seared off a little.
Okay.
Which is not gonna take very long in that pot.
Nope.
As you can see, it's starting to brown up there. So as it's browning up, just gonna let it sit for a couple seconds.
So you just want to render the fat off to get some color on there and get the flavor of the bacon out.
Exactly. You want that all through the whole chowder. You don't want it.
So a lot of people don't really think of using bacon when they're making their seafood chowder. They just think of the fish stock and all the ingredients.
Exactly. And some people, that's what they prefer. They don't like bacon in it, which is not a huge part. If you want to use, you can just use butter instead of bacon.
Yeah.
For the fat to thicken up your chowder.
Right.
So now it's browning up. I'm just going to add this butter in there as well.
Okay.
I'm just going to stir that around.
And the butter won't burn as quickly because you've got the bacon fat in there too, and that kind of increases the smoking point of the butter. You get that nice creamy flavor.
Exactly. So now that that's rendering down, we're going to add our mirepoix in.
Okay. So the mirepoix is? The
mirepoix is onions, carrots, and celery with your basic mirepoix. And I'm actually going to add a little shallots in there too, just to give it an extra little sweet onion flavor.
Okay.
So now that that's going, we're just going to put each one of these in. Just stir them up. You got your carrots.
You smell the bacon and the butter kind of going already. It adds a little bit of saltiness to the chowder as well.
Absolutely. That's our celery. And then finally, we're just going to add the shallots.
So once you put in your mirepoix, what are you trying to achieve? You got your bacon cooking off, and you've got the butter and the fat in there. So
now we're just kind of sweating off and just partially cooking the vegetables so that they're not completely crunchy, but they still have a little crunch to them. But we don't want to cook them all the way through in this part of it because we are going to add milk and cream and let that come up and thicken. Okay. So it's going to cook as well a little more. So we don't want to cook it all the way through, but we want to get it a good little sweat and get all those flavors bonded up. Right. So now that that's going, they're starting to steam up a little and sweat off. You got a good amount of fat in the bottom there. Yeah. So now we're going to add some flour, and this is going to actually thicken up the chowder later on. Okay. So now we're just going to put that in there with the vegetables and stir it all in.
So how would you know how much flour to add?
It's this equal parts flour to fat.
To fat? So you're making a basic roux?
Basic roux, exactly. And I didn't really measure it out because I've made it enough times that I know the amounts that I need. Right. So we're just going to put that through. We're actually going to make a blonde roux, which is just lightly cooked, nice blonde color. If you wanted to make a little darker chowder, some people like the chowder a little bit darker, so you could just cook the roux a little bit longer, and then the cream will turn a little bit darker color. Okay. But the trick is to cook the raw flour out so that you have... Exactly, so you don't have that floury taste. Yeah, exactly. And just while you're doing that, I'm now going to add some corn. Okay. I'm just going to add half of that. Canned corn, fresh corn, grilled corn? Fresh corn. Fresh corn? Fresh off the cob. Perfect time of year in the fall for it. Yep. And that's just going to add a little more sweetness to our chowder. Okay. You don't want to put too much in there or it'll turn your chowder yellow. Right. You're not making corn chowder, we're making seafood chowder. Exactly. So it's just there as an accent flavor, give it a little color for presentation wise. Right. So now that flour's cooking out, we're gonna add our milk and our cream. So
Okay.
I'm gonna do about a ½ liter of milk. And the order you put it in doesn't really matter.
Doesn't really matter.
We're just gonna put that in there. And then I'm gonna do that with a liter of cream. So I'm about doing 2 parts cream, and this is 35% whipping cream.
Okay, so heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff, and that is 2% milk.
Okay, so a little bit of. So what does the milk and the cream together do? It's kind of like a half and half. You don't get.
Exactly. So it kind of keeps it from being too rich.
Right.
Kind of settles the milk, kind of brings that down, but you still want your chowder to be nice and rich. So it kind of gives it a in between, not too rich and not too light.
Okay.
So now we're gonna just let that kind of cook. I have some steamed off baby red potatoes, so I'm actually gonna dice these up and put them into the chowder.
Okay, so they're going to add to this part while this is cooking and reducing?
Exactly, yeah. Just to make sure they're nice and they're only partially cooked here.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually do a fairly big chunks. You can do them whatever size you prefer.
Yeah. So how did you find the international chowder competition? You've been into a couple of years now. You've won twice.
Yes.
And so what are the other chowders that you're competing against like? Are they way different or?
This year I've seen a big difference from years before. The guys went out of the loop on this one. Some guys had tofu in their chowder, their colors of their chowder. That's one thing that's a big thing is you want your chowder to look like chowder.
Right.
Which some people got away from that.
Yeah.
But they were going for outside the box, which is cool to see. One of the guys from Finland did like a decomposed chowder, so he had all his fish in the bottom and he actually served it in a beaker and they poured the broth in over top, which is nice to see.
Just turning our traditional potato seafood chowder into something new.
Actually, yeah, they're
innovative.
showing people new ways how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So now I got these all cut up. I'm actually gonna add them in, and we're just gonna let that sit and thicken up.
Okay. So we just let that sit and simmer.
Yes.
So when you serve this at the restaurant, what do you serve traditionally with it? This is on your menu, right?
Yes. So we actually serve our buttermilk biscuits with it.
Okay.
Which we're gonna make here in a few minutes.
Okay, great. So this just kind of sits and simmers, and as it cooks along, it's got the roux in there to thicken.
Exactly.
But as it reduces in the potato starches and all that.
Exactly, will help thicken it as well.
Will help thicken it as well.
And the thick cream.
Okay. So don't go away, come right back. We're gonna let this simmer. We're gonna get ready and we're gonna make some buttermilk biscuits. So we'll be right back.
Excellent.
Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson with the Culinary Institute of Canada. Today at Annie's Table Culinary Studio in New London, Prince Edward Island. Guest chef today, Kyle Panton. We have our champ chowder on the go.
Yes,
from the Shellfish Festival. And now we're going to make some buttermilk biscuits.
Absolutely.
Okay, so our chowder is just kind of sitting. We've got all the ingredients in there.
Yep.
And we're just letting the flavors kind of meld together and it thicken up on its own power with the roux and the cream.
Exactly.
So as that's simmering, we make our garnish.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're gonna make buttermilk biscuits. So we're gonna put our dry ingredients in one bowl, our wet ingredients in another bowl, and then we're gonna bind them together. But you have to do them separate to make sure they're nice and mixed, and then put them together. You can't put them all in one bowl and mix it, or they won't turn out.
Okay.
So we're gonna sift our flour and our baking powder into a bowl to keep any clumps out of it.
Right. So just through any fine strainer or sieve that you have at home, just to
Exactly.
and you're just looking for lumps that might be in your flour.
Exactly. So we're just gonna mix.
Plus
that
it blends
in.
all the ingredients together.
You just give it a little tap, helps it go through.
So these are biscuits you serve with your chowder at the restaurant?
Absolutely. And then we're just gonna add a little salt in there too, just for seasoning.
Okay.
Not too much because we don't want them to be overpowering.
So salt and baking powder?
Yeah, exactly. Salt, baking powder, and all-purpose flour. So now I'm just gonna set this aside.
Okay, so our dry ingredients are blended together.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm just gonna take an egg and just crack it into the bowl here.
Mm-hmm.
No shells.
Shells? I put shells in mine. That's French.
There you go. And then I'm gonna add my buttermilk in there as well.
Okay. So the buttermilk in with the eggs, and then we'll whisk throw it together to get it nice and blended.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is kind of like a leavener. The egg is. It'll help the biscuits rise.
Okay. So a lot of people make biscuits at home, and they don't always. Sometimes they're light, sometimes they're heavy and dense. What kind of happens Is it the process or the mixing or the ingredients, or is it?
It's there's a combination of a couple things. It could be your baking powder also helps leaven it, so it could be a little dead if it's too old.
Okay.
But the biggest thing people do at home is they overmix them. You don't want to mix your ingredients too much.
Okay.
Or it'll make for a tough, dense biscuit.
Right.
So now that I got my wet ingredients over here, my dry ingredients here, before I add the two together, I'm just going to cut in my butter.
Okay.
So you could cut this in by using your hands, just work it into the flour.
Yeah.
But today we're going to use a pastry cutter.
I use butter in mine too, but I know some people use shortening.
Yes,
same idea. As long as it's a fat,
yeah, just
to cut
fat.
into it to kind of.
Yeah. So I'm just going to work that butter into the flour, sorry.
Okay.
Just until it gets to a nice pea-like shape, like mealy.
Okay, so you want it well blended and just kind of that.
Exactly.
Kind of a cornmeal type of texture.
And it's going to stick into your pastry brush here, or pastry cutter here a little, and you just want to knock it out.
Yeah, if you don't have one of these at home, you could just use your hands and rub it together.
Rub it together.
Pretty simple, pretty simple.
As you can see, they are breaking down into almost flake sizes now. So
yep.
Just about there.
So about how much butter? About half a cup of butter for this particular recipe?
Yeah.
We've got a cup of flour?
Exactly. A cup of flour, about a cup of butter, and then you want 1 egg to about a cup of buttermilk.
Okay. So it's all about ratios.
Exactly. Yeah, baking is very particular.
That's why we have pastry chefs.
Exactly. So now that I got this butter, it's cut in there pretty good. I'm just going to take it.
It doesn't have to be exact, it's just kind of...
No, exactly. So and you can just kind of finish it off in your hands a little and make sure that there's no big clumps.
So when you roll these out and cut them, what temperature should be warm in the oven up to?
Yeah, so we're going to preheat the oven to 415.
Okay.
Or 425, in that general area.
Somewhere about 400.
As long
so
as
you get the nice flashy heat to get the fat to leaven.
As long as you keep a good eye on it, they should go cook nicely.
Okay.
So we're going to add our wet in there now.
So now we add the eggs and the buttermilk?
Yeah, I'm just going to mix it together with my hands.
Okay.
Just so I can feel when the dough starts to form.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be... You could use a mixer, but you got to keep a good eye on it because you don't want it to overmix. Right.
You don't want to. You're not making bread. You don't want to knead it.
No, exactly.
You just want to combine it till it comes together.
Exactly. And you can see there.
And be very gentle.
It's going to start coming together now.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have a little extra flour on hand.
Scraper there for you.
Thank you.
Our chowder's starting to thicken up quite nicely too, and then so this just kind of sits and stews on the countertop until the vegetables are cooked.
Exactly.
Right, and we haven't added any fish to this yet, so
fish or seasoning.
That goes in later.
Yeah, exactly. We kind of leave our seasoning to near the end because our fish is going to give it a little bit of a salty flavor, so we don't want to overpower it too much. So I'm just going to put this out on the board. As you can see, it kind of gets a little messy, but it'll all come together here in a second. I'm just going to scrape all this stuff off my hands. Mm-hmm. So now we're just going to fold this in, and you just want to knead it until it comes together.
Okay.
And there is going to be little excess crumbs here.
Yep. So you just want to bind it together. You just want enough moisture.
Exactly.
Don't get nervous and start adding more liquid to it because then it becomes too wet. It needs to be reasonably dry as you do it.
Yes, exactly. And if you were to ask someone like my mother who has been baking for years, she would tell you how many times to knead it.
Right.
So now that we got a nice dough,
okay,
I'm just going to take this off.
So just bound together, nice and soft,
yep.
not too worked.
And if you have flour stuck or pieces stuck to your hand, just use a little extra flour and that'll come right off. So I'm just going to put that to the side. And now we're just going to take a rolling pin and just kind of trying to make this a little even so we can cut it. And when you're cutting it, you can use a cookie cutter. Most people use like a round cookie cutter.
Yeah.
We're actually just going to use a knife today.
Okay.
And cut it into triangles.
You get less waste that way too, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So we have Lois Craswell giving us a hand in the background today. Can you bring us a pan, please, Lois? Lois is a graduate student of the culinary program at the Culinary Institute of Canada and giving us a hand on the show today.
So I just rolled that out to about 1 inch.
Okay.
I'm just going to make sure that's not sticking. So now I'm just going to cut them. So I'm just going to start cutting in different shapes
Okay, so not the traditional round square biscuits, just
this is gonna help with plating too. You can be a little more different with the plating.
And then you don't have the extra dough that you got to keep working and forming into the shapes, because the more you work it, the tougher the biscuits get, right?
Exactly. So I'm just gonna put on my pan a little flour so the biscuits don't stick to them.
Okay.
So you're just gonna dust that. And now we're just gonna, you don't want them touching, but they can be fairly close. They're not gonna flatten out, they're just gonna rise up.
Right.
And as you can see, there's layers to it.
And then that's kind of what you're looking for.
That's exactly what you're looking for.
That's what's going to leaven it, and that's how light your biscuits are going to be.
Exactly.
So now that they're cut, so how long do we put those in the oven for?
We're going to put these in for about 15 to 20 minutes, but we're going to keep an eye on them. And just when they're nice golden brown, that's when we're going to take them out. Okay,
so those are going to go in the oven. We're going to check our chowder, and we're going to get ready to do our shellfish, so don't go away. Welcome back to Kitchen Uncovered. I'm Chef Andrew Nicholson of the Culinary Institute of Canada. Today at Annie's Table Culinary Studio in New London, Prince Edward Island. Guest chef today, Kyle Panton, Sims Steakhouse and Oyster Bar. So we're doing chowder. We have our buttermilk biscuits in the oven. So we have to notice we haven't put any seafood in the chowder yet. So
yes, important part. So we're going to start off by just steaming off clams and mussels. And we're going to actually pick them out of the shell and then add them out of the shell.
Okay, so you get the chowder base going,
yes,
and then add the seafood later.
Exactly, because you don't want it to overcook and just break down and flake into the chowder. You actually want it to be there, be whole.
Right, okay, good point.
So for steaming our clams, we're just going to heat up this pan, nice and hot, which we had kind of going while we were talking there. We're just going to add in the clams and the mussels, just that. And they're just going to use their natural juices just to get going.
Okay.
And then while that's happening, I'm just going to add in some tomatoes, some diced up tomatoes.
And this is just like another basic mirepoix that you use just for flavoring.
Exactly, it's just there for flavoring. It's not going to go into the chowder, it's just there to give a little extra flavor to the fish.
Okay.
So I'm going to use a bay leaf and some whole peppercorns, a few chili flakes, and some scallions, green onions.
Green onions.
And I'm going to throw a lemon in there as well. So I'm just going to cut the lemon in half. I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of the juice. Try to get it in the pot. And then I'm just going to throw the whole thing in there.
Oh, okay, right on. So that's going to give it a little bit of acidity and add lots of flavor.
Exactly.
And none of this will actually go into the chowder.
None of it will go in the chowder, just the flavor.
It's the flavor of it, right.
And then before we cover it up, I'm just going to pour in a little white wine.
Okay. And would you use beer or anything else in this too? Or
absolutely.
Just white wine?
You can use any form of liquid, really.
Okay.
Alcohol always seems to be a favorite. Gives a little extra flavor. So we're just going to let that steam there, and then once they're open, that's when they're ready to go.
That's when they're ready to go. Okay. So we'll switch out. So we have our chowder base. Those are going to steam.
Yep.
And then we have our chowder base here that's been sitting. And you can see that it's really thick there now. And that's kind of the consistency we're looking for when we do a chowder,
exactly.
Right?
It's thickening up nice. You want it to just kind of slowly roll off your spoon. So now, while the shellfish is kind of steaming off there, I'm going to add the rest of my fish in, just to let it start to cook a little, because I'm going to add it in raw.
Right.
So what I got here is I got Atlantic salmon. So I'm just going to pour that in there.
Okay. When you put it in now, so that the fish just cooks and doesn't fall apart. Because a lot of people put it in, and as they stir it, the fish cooks and breaks down, and then it basically disappears. But
exactly. And we're also going to use some PEI halibut.
Okay.
Put that all in there, and then we just kind of stir it up. And then I'm going to finish off with some fresh PEI scallops.
Cool. Very good. Pretty much the top 5 fish from our shores, minus a little bit of lobster.
Absolutely.
But you can put lobster in there too if you wanted to.
Definitely. I'd always put a little less lobster just because lobster is a bold flavor.
Yeah.
And it will take over a lot of the flavor. So if you're using lobster, just do a little less.
Okay. So you just let that cook now, check the seasoning, and just let that cook till your fish is done.
Exactly. So that's going to cook. I'm also going to add some chives in, just to give a little more of that onion flavor and for color presentation. So we're just going to put a little in. Just like that. I'm just going to stir them up. And you don't want to put them in too early, or they will change color a little.
And you also don't want to stir the chowder too much at this point either, because you'll break up your fish.
Exactly. And then we're also going to throw in a little salt and pepper.
Okay.
Just a couple pinches there, and then we'll let it sit for a little bit, and then we'll taste it.
And when you're stirring in, you want to go gentle and make sure that you kind of fold it in.
Yeah, and do like figure eights. Do like around like in an 8 shape, just so you get cover all the bottom of the pot so nothing sticks.
Right.
So
it smells delicious.
I'm just gonna give that a little taste. Our shellfish should be getting close there now.
Yeah, and we're just steaming those till they basically open, right? Once the shell is open and we can get at them, then it's done.
Exactly. I'm just gonna add a little more seasoning. Stir that in.
Okay, and our biscuits have been in the oven.
Should be just about done. I'm just gonna give them a check.
And they were at 425, Kyle.
425, yeah, and it took about 15 minutes, and they are ready. And as you'll see, they're nice golden brown color.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You can kind of see the layers in, similar to a croissant. Do you mind passing me that bowl, and I'll set them out?
Absolutely. They look great, nice and light, well aired out. And you can see the layers before we bake them off, and you can see how the fat kind of leavened and made them nice and light and poofy.
Poofy, exactly.
So we go to Sim's to eat. We're going to expect these biscuits with a bowl of chowder.
Exactly.
Our mussels are open there now.
Mussels are open.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll give them. Let's take them out of the shell.
So once they're open, all right, they're ready to come out.
Yep. So just be careful because it is going to be hot. But you can see they're open. They let go of the shell. So for a clam, you're just going to take it out. And then you're going to pull off this little access around the top.
Okay.
And then we're literally just going to put them right in just like that, nice and whole.
And do you save some in the shell for garnish after, or do you believe in using the shells?
I'm not going to use the shells for these, but you could if you want. At the restaurant, we leave the mussels in the shell.
Okay.
I cooked some off that I'll add in there as well.
You just want to make sure you get that skin off the
Exactly, because that's going to be really chewy.
And just stir those in. I can tell by the color of the salmon and the texture of the halibut that went in that it's cooked.
It's cooked. I'm just going to give it one final taste to make sure. Ready to go.
Ready to go? I'll grab you a bowl.
Thank you.
And get you awesome. So that's how you make championship chowder.
That's it right there. Nice and slow. Let it cook out. Add your fish near the end. And then our biscuits are a great garnish for it because it goes very well. People like to dip it in the chowder. So we'll just kind of, you can see all that.
Looks great, nice and rich and thick like you expect a chowder to.
Exactly.
Sometimes we get chowders that are a little bit watery, and that's because of the thickening agent.
Exactly. Some people don't. You could also, if you're gluten-free, you could use a potato for thicking, like potato flour. Or cook down some potatoes and put it in there.
Or rice flour or anything like that.
Exactly.
And some people get lumps of the flour in there. I know you put yours in early in the cooking process to blend into the fat.
Exactly.
That kind of helps with the lumps kind of disappearing, and you don't have that issue later.
Exactly. So even when you're putting it in the bowl, you can see all the different colors and all that stuff. That's what you want. You want to be able to see those colors. You don't want it all to be one.
Excellent.
For that, we're just going to add a biscuit to it. Sit it on the side. Just like that.
Perfect. How simple is that?
There you go.
Thanks for joining us on the show today. Beautiful looking chowder.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all your successes recently.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Check out our website, kitchenuncovered.com, for all the recipes, and tune in next time. Thanks for watching.